Hello, Professor Toybox here along with Phineas, and today I'm going to implement Ferb's quest to collect the parts needed to build the water slide. There are 3 parts to this quest. First, we're going to set up Ferb as a mission giver to get the quest going. Second, we need to implement the collection quest to gather the bolts. And then third, once we've collected all the bolts, we need to return to Ferb and build the water slide. And so the first thing I'm going to do, I've just loaded up this toy box. And before we get started, I wanted to show you something, because last time I mentioned the need to set up that button behind the fence over there. And I'm going to show you why. So as I open the editor, that kicks off Canvas because we've now left that dynamic trigger. And it looks like I have access to the editor, but when I come into Spark mode, or try to, you'll notice I have no spark. And if we move the cursor around, you'll notice Phineas is actually running around on the ground in the backyard. So it's teleported Phineas, and in doing so, it's kind of broke Spark mode. So if I exit out of Spark mode and return, you'll notice it put me back on the start pad, not where Phineas was in the backyard. And so because of this weird behavior with that thing we built to escape the backyard there, I need to push this button back here to turn off that dynamic trigger. And now I can safely enter the editor and go into Spark mode, and we're all set. So that's why I have this button over here. I just wanted to demo that for you because I didn't do that last time. Alright, so as we get started, the first thing we're going to do is set up Ferb as our mission giver. And I've already dropped Ferb over here the same way I did Candace earlier, and I set his behavior to stand still so he doesn't wander off. And I've already dropped the creativitoys that I need for each phase of this. So we'll cover the first phase first. So last time we had dropped this text displayer and hooked it up over there for Candace. And for the first part, I also need the dynamic trigger and a radar marker. And so let's start with the radar marker. We're going to do a new actor connection. I'm going to connect this up to Ferb. He'll be the actor. And on the properties for this, I'm going to set the beacon type to be a yellow exclamation point. Yellow because that's typically what's used in the playsets for the main quest. The beacon location needs to be the connected actor, and I want this radar marker to be on by default when you enter the toy box. Now the dynamic trigger, we're going to hook this up to Ferb as well, so we'll do a new actor connection. And he'll be the actor for this toy. And in the properties for this, the target needs to be the connected actor. And the trigger distance, I'm going to set this to be 6. So it's about a 1.5 block radius around Ferb. Okay. So the collection quest will begin when the player enters that radius around Ferb. So on the dynamic trigger, we're going to do a new logic connection when entered by player any. And the first thing we'll do is come over to the text displayer, and under the defense category, he's going to say collect the coins. And of course, that's the only phrase I have that gives the player instructions on what to do to let them know they need to collect something. It's not coins they'll be collecting, but they get the idea. On the dynamic trigger, it also needs to do something else. So under the new logic connection, once again, when entered by player any, we're going to come over to this radar marker and deactivate it. And then on the radar marker, we'll do a new logic connection. When this is deactivated, we'll turn back and come back to the radar, or to the dynamic trigger, and turn that off. because I only want this behavior to happen one time. And because we're doing this, if we need to reset this and test it multiple times, I'm going to use my level starter out here, which is connected to my reset button. And on the level starter, we'll do a new logic connection on catalyze. We'll make sure that this dynamic trigger is on. And we'll also make sure that the radar marker is on. And so that way, if we want to replay this or retest it, we have a way to start over. So that puts that state back. So there's Ferb as our mission giver. All right, so the second part of the quest is going to be the collection part. For that, I need 2 additional toys. I've placed a collectible tracker and a replayer. And I'm going to use the replayer to put down the pieces we're going to collect. So on the replayer, I'm going to do, under the properties, I'm going to take the playback interval to 0, so all the bolts show up simultaneously. And then we'll come out of the editor, step on the replayer to open the menu in the lower right, and on my Wii U, I press B to start recording. Step off, and then I can get back in the editor. And now the replayer is recording, so anything I put down will be recorded. And so I'm going to come to the Gameplay Toys drawer, and we're going to use the Lightning Bolt collectible. We're going to place these around the toy box, several of them. So I'm going to place one up here on top of this structure. We're going to place one up here in the middle of this building, like that. And another one over here, hiding around the corner. And originally I had placed one back hiding over here, but All Night Gaming kind of went ahead of me and tried to recreate my toy box. And I liked one of the things that he did. He actually put this one up on top of the Dynaco station. And he used that climbing piece over there, gave it a purpose. So I'm going to move that closer in a moment, but we'll go ahead and put the bolt up here because I like that. And then I'm going to hide one back over here. I'm going to hide one in the neighbor's yard over here. And in this yard in this corner. And one more over here. I'm trying to put these in a place where it's not too far away from Phineas and Ferb's house because I don't want them to wander too far this early. And now we'll exit out of the editor, and that puts us back over here, and I can step back on the replayer, press B one more time to stop recording, and press A to clear. And again, you want to press A only once. Pressing it twice can corrupt the replayer. But that took the bolts out. So now the replayer will put the bolts down when we're ready. Now on the collectible tracker, we'll come into the properties for that, and the collectible type needs to match. So we're going to scroll down and look for that lightning bolt collectible. Right there. And we'll go ahead and show these on the radar. Alright, one thing I noticed when I was setting the bolt up over here on that roof is I forgot to put the climbing pipe on the back of this building. And so I'm going to come down to Building Sets Group 2 and scroll to the right. And I'm looking for those climbing pipes because the player needs to be able to get up on that roof. Especially if they can't fly. There we are. And while I'm here, did I put the one over here? No, I did not. Let's go ahead and do that too, because we'll need this in the future for Meep's quest. There we are. I did all the pipe climbs over there. Forgot to come over here and do those. And then so we can get to that bolt, let's go ahead and move this piece here a little bit closer to the gas station. And I just want to verify that I can actually get up there. There we go. So that works. All right. So the toys are set up now for the second stage of this quest. To kick that off, once again, we come back to our dynamic trigger for our mission giver, and we're going to do a new logic connection. When entered by player any, not only will it turn off the radar marker and display that text, but we're going to come over to the replayer and do a playback. And that will put all of the bolts into the toy box that we recorded earlier. And then the collectible tracker will automatically keep track of those things. And so this is the toy that will know when we've finished that part of the quest. And once again, just to make sure, if we have to test this multiple times, we'll go to our level starter and do a new logic connection on Catalyze, come over to our collectible tracker, and reset it. Okay, so now the first two stages are done. Now once the player has collected all the bolts, I want them to return to Ferb, and when they talk to Ferb, he's going to build the water slide. And so we have a new second dynamic trigger here and a second radar marker. And I've also got another replayer over here to put the water slide in place. And I've also got a bunch of locators spread out over here in this area where this is going to go. And it doesn't quite matter where these go. You can kind of look at how I've got them placed here and put them in roughly the same place. The key for these is you want the little blue dot to be facing in that direction. And so you can see I've done that on all of these. And one toy I did forget to put down that we need for those is the effects generator. So we come back to the Creativa toys. The effects generator is over here. So we'll place that there. Okay. So let's start with the effects generator. We'll do a new locator connection, and we're going to connect this up to all of these locators. That's where the effect is going to be. And I'm going to generate some smoke that will kind of help hide the water slide appearing out of nowhere. Kind of help explain why it appears out of nowhere. And I liked kind of the additional effect that All Night Gaming did in his. He had a couple of effects generators, and one of them was, or a couple of effects, and one of them was kind of kicking up dirt while Ferb was building this, in addition to the smoke, I think. But I'm not going to do that on mine. If you want to see how to do that on his, you can do that. It's a neat effect. But, there, so now that's connected up to all 5 of those. Once again, let's connect up this radar marker to Ferb as our actor. And we'll set the properties on this, and it's going to be a little bit different. For the beacon type, we're going to use a yellow arrow, or not the exclamation point, because the exclamation point indicates a quest, and this is kind of a waypoint or a milestone in the quest. Beacon location needs to be the connected actor, and this one's going to be off by default, so those are fine. For the dynamic trigger, again, new actor connection. Connect that up to Ferb. We'll set the properties on this the same way we did the other one. So the target is going to be the connected actor, and the trigger distance is going to be 6. All right, and then the last thing we need to set up is the replayer. We're going to take the playback interval to 0. Oh, and by the way, I've also got 2 time delayers that I've dropped down for this third stage. So we'll get to those in a moment. So let's go ahead and start with the replayer. So once again, we'll come out of Spark mode, out of the editor, and step on the replayer, which opens the menu in the lower right. I press B on my Wii U to start recording, and then I step off of the replayer so I can get into the editor. And then we come down to the set pieces. And the water slide I want to have sit right in here. And we're going to do this, let's see, like that. That's the orientation that I want. And it's a very tight little window right there, where it's not bumping up against the tree in the backyard there, and it's not bumping up against these fence pieces over here. And as far as lining this up in this direction, let me grab my screenshot. We're going to put this over here a little ways, kind of like that. It could go this way a little bit, doesn't really matter, as long as it sits in this area behind their house. So I'll press A to place it, and I'll come back out of the editor, step on the replayer, and press B to stop recording and A to clear. And now that we've done that, I can come over to this tree and move this over a little bit to the edge of that seam, and we can go ahead and style this. And before we style that, I got to put my power disc down. So that's going to be my tri-state terrain. And it's not registering it. That's interesting. Pick it up and put it back down. Well, that's very interesting. Yeah, it's not in the list. I'm not sure why that is, but I'll have to look at that later. But at any rate, you want to style it to be the same as these trees. Okay, so now we have the water slide and the replayer set up to put that down. And we've got these pieces set up. So now what we want to do is when the collection quest ends, we want to turn on these 2 toys, which means these are going to be off by default. And right now when you place a dynamic trigger, it's on by default. So my level starter, I need to do a new logic connection on catalyze. I need to come over to this dynamic trigger and turn it off. And we're going to have to push that button before we test this, because right now both of these are on and both of those will kick in. So I don't want that. And also on the level starter, we'll do a new logic connection on catalyze. We'll make sure that this radar marker is off. So when the collection quest is done, the collectible tracker will do a new logic connection. When the final collectible is collected, we're going to turn on this dynamic trigger, and we're going to turn on that radar marker. That'll tell the player they need to come back over here to Ferb. And then once they return to Ferb, this dynamic trigger will kick off everything else. So on this dynamic trigger, we're going to do a new logic connection. When entered by player any, first thing I want to do is come over to our effects generator, and we're going to play 1 time out of the smoke drawer, large area smoke, and that'll put it at all 5 of those locators out there. And then I don't want the water slide to appear right away. I'd like there to be some activity. I want it to sound like Ferb is actually building it. And so that's why we have those 2 time delayers over there. So we're going to come over on this first one. We're going to do a new logic connection on the dynamic trigger when entered by player any. We're going to come over to the sound generator. And under the general category, there's a sound effect here. I think I have to scroll down a little ways to get to it. It's called cartoon scampering. There it is. And that only lasts about 2 seconds, so I'd like it to go a little bit longer, so that's why we have these time delayers. So on the first time delayer, under the properties, I'm going to set the delay time to be 2 seconds. And on the dynamic trigger here for phase 3, we'll do a new logic connection when entered by player any. Not only will it kick off the smoke and the sound, but we're going to kick off this time delayer. We'll start the delay, and on this time delayer, we'll do a new logic connection when the delay is completed. Come over here to the sound generator, and we're going to play that same sound again. Cartoon scampering. Okay. And we want to wait for that to finish before we put the water slide out, so that's why we have another time delayer. And so on this one, we're going to set the properties on this one to be 4 seconds. And once again, on the dynamic trigger for the last stage here, we'll do a new logic connection when entered by player any. We're going to come over to this other time delayer, and we'll start the delay. And we'll do a new logic connection on the delay completed. I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to play this again for the 3rd time. So we're looking for cartoon scampering. And this time delayer will also kick off that replayer. So new logic connection when the delay is completed. Come over here and do playback, which will put the water slide out into the environment. And on this dynamic trigger, a new logic connection when entered by player any. We're going to go ahead and turn off this radar marker because we don't need that anymore. And on the radar marker, a new logic connection when it's deactivated, we'll turn around and turn off. Come back to the dynamic trigger and turn it off. So that only happens 1 time. Okay, so this is connected up to the effects generator to start the smoke, the sound generator to start the sound, the 2 time delayers to kick off more sound and eventually put the water slide in. And it's also connected up to, let's see, I just think I said the radar marker. Yeah. And one more thing I want to do is a new logic connection when entered by player any. We're going to come over to our text displayer one more time. And under here, we're going to come down to the victory category. And Ferb is going to say, there it is. All right, I believe that is everything. So now we can go ahead and test this out. So I'm going to go ahead and save my game just to make sure before I do anything else. And then I'll do that and I'll meet you back here in just a moment. Okay, so we're back, and I've saved my game, and now we can go ahead and test this out. And first thing I want to do is push this button to make sure everything is in the right state. All of the radar markers and dynamic triggers and everything. Okay, so we run up to Ferb, and he says, collect the coins. And now you'll see on the radar marker, and you can see up there, we have our bolts. So that's worked out good. And now we can run around and collect all of these. All right, there's one. And Candace is kicking in. And here we are back in the yard, so that worked. But I don't want to go ahead and test that again, so we'll just come over here and turn her off. So that dynamic trigger's off. And now we can run around and collect those bolts. So the first one will come up here on top of the buildings. There's that one. We'll pick up this one over here. Get the one up on top of the building there. There we go. And one more to go. Okay, and now the next radar marker for the third stage has appeared on the radar. So as we come back to our yard, we should see that radar marker over top of Ferb. And it's a yellow arrow, which is good. And now when we walk up to Ferb, here it is. There's the smoke. We hear the sound. And there's the water slide. So, hooray! To celebrate, let's go climb up on that thing and take a ride. So that's it for the collection quest. If you want to build this in your own toy box, you can find logic diagrams on my blog to help you out. The link is in the video description. And if you like Disney Infinity and you're not a subscriber yet, just click my photo in the lower right corner of the video. Next time, we'll work on the Monster Truck Rally. Until then, take care.